A study conducted by a group called Citizens for Tax Justice in the U.S. says only 57 Fortune 500 companies in the U.S. disclose what they would expect to pay in U.S. taxes if these profits were not officially booked offshore. The report claims that those 57 companies would owe $184.4 billion in additional federal taxes. But despite the fact that financial centers like the BVI are heavily scrutinized and regulated by groups such as the Organization of the Economic Development, the OECD, the Citizens for Tax Justice group insists that financial centers like the BVI are tax havens. Sean Rose has more.
The British Virgin Islands and a number of other Caribbean jurisdictions cried foul in June this year over a decision by the European Union Commission to add them to a list of blacklisted countries. The concerning blacklist was issued on June 17th with the announced purpose of identifying non-EU countries that have non-compliant tax practices. However, the list was met with criticisms and deemed unfair because the territories continues to strive in sync with regulations and requirements from international agencies. That list included 30 financial services jurisdictions with the exception of Dominica, namely Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, the Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Bermuda, British Virgin Islands, Cayman Islands, Grenada, Montserrat, Panama, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Kitts and Nevis, Turks and Caicos, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. A few of those countries have since been removed from that list. Addressing the launch of government's BVI Forward campaign on September 17th at HLSCC, Bermuda's Finance Minister Bob Richards cited the blatant double standards by developed countries on the issue of tax evasion.
Having failed by means of laws and tax treaties to collect the tax revenues they want, major industrialized countries are turning to moral justifications that are replete with inconsistencies, double standards, and contradictions.
Now, the Citizens for Tax Justice in the U.S. claims that tax havens have 4 identifying features. First, it says a tax haven is a jurisdiction with very low or non-existent taxes. Second is the existence of laws that encourage financial secrecy and inhibit an effective exchange of information about taxpayers to tax and law enforcement authorities. Third is a general lack of transparency in legislative, legal, or administrative practices. And fourth is the lack of a requirement that activities be substantial, suggesting that a jurisdiction is trying to earn modest fees by enabling avoidance. Within the context of a shifting goalpost, to which country does that model apply? Despite receiving high ratings for being compliant and cooperative in the exchange of tax information, the BVI has been referred to as one of the world's top 3 notorious tax havens by the CTJ. Could there be ulterior motives behind the series of negative labels and attacks targeted at Caribbean financial centers like BVI? In response to this question on the subject at his one-on-one with the media on October 8, Premier Dr. Orlando Smith was not as definitive, but he did say BVI is not a tax haven. Do you think that there are careless attacks and careless statements that the organization make from time to time?
I'm sure that when they make the statement, they do some kind of research. And what we have to do is to rebut.
Do you agree that BVI is one of the top 3 tax havens in the world?
No.
You don't want to support that response?
No, I don't agree with that. No. As a country and as financial services jurisdictions, it's our responsibility to show the positive side of what we are doing and to really promote our jurisdictions as efficiently as we can.
The governments of the 20 wealthiest countries in the world vowed that they will tighten the regulations that enabled rampant tax evasions in their own nation and territories. Managing Director of the BVI Financial Services Commission, Robert Matavia, says the international reputation of the financial services industry is at an all-time low. His remarks came at the 2015 BVI STEP conference on October 7th.
Financial centers, financial services practitioners, financial service regulators, and indeed anyone associated with the financial services industry continue to take a beating in the international press. Consequently, the reputation of the industry is at an all-time low. This is the reality of the new playing field for cross-border financial services. Now, if the BVI is to continue to be a relevant player in this new playing field, our watchword, our mantra, and our resolve must be to learn and to evolve.
In a report issued by the Tax Justice Network, referred to as the Financial Secrecy Index, it assessed 73 different jurisdictions around the world that allowed billions of foreign currency to be stored in offshore accounts. The Tax Justice Network listed what it called the 10 biggest tax havens in the world, countries that allow the highest level of client financial secrecy, tax evasion, and offshore accounts. The top 5 on that list included USA in number 5, Hong Kong at number 4, Luxembourg number 3, Cayman Islands number 2, and Switzerland at number 1. Over the past 30 years, the BVI has established itself as a global leader in the provision of financial services with preeminence in company incorporations.
Our gateways to China are also rivals for the business that we have been doing for more than 30 years. By copying our laws and enticing away top talent from our islands to their jurisdictions, they impeded our growth. But they also work with us, and so we need to be poised to match their abilities. I urge us to set our sights on that goal to be more enticing than Singapore and Hong Kong, even as we seek markets closer to home in Latin America.
In August of 2015, the BVI was rated largely compliant for its approach to tax transparency and exchange of information. The rating appeared in the supplementary peer review report published by the Global Forum on Transparency and Exchange of Information for Tax Purposes, the Global Forum, a task force set up by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, in Paris. Sean Rose, JTV News.